So, this new playlist has just been called Kantian dialectics, because it's all the idea of imaginal constructs, or noumena, and comparing it to how different that can be to phenomena, or the physical plane as it's sometimes known, the world of stuff, um, and that's all an offshoot from the playlist. Time is a map, not a terrain. So we're dealing with the maps, okay? In theme with the YouTube channel being a sort of Borderlandian map type idea, we're dealing with the maps. In this particular cartography, or in another way of putting it, imaginal constructs. With that, one of the things that came up in the last video on the playlist was a big rant about the evils of the New Age movement, hating women, and how they're not the liberators of women that they claim to be from the Jehovah's Anunnaki. They are a variant on that theme, and their symbolism is quite lousy. The memetics of those cults are lousy. It was not a pro-Christian argument. It was more observing that some aspects of Christian doctrine are helpful and others are not. Let's not forget that the origin of the character Lilith and the origin of that is and the origin of the creation of Eve in Christianity was Lilith disobeying Adam, and then Eve being made from Adam's rib to be subservient to Adam in the first place. So the Abrahamic religions do have at its foundational principles extreme misogyny. The lengths to which it was taken, however, in terms of the Lilith and Lilith symbolism, it goes far beyond Christianity. The Book of Enoch, which was used by John Dee, for example, is not considered apocryphal. Is considered apocryphal, rather. In other words, it's not canon. It's not considered part of the holy texts or doctrine of the Christian groups or the Abrahamic religions more generally. It's considered a sort of almost like a fanfic that John Dee was using, and so things like Nephilim attacking Jewish women and so on and so forth are not actually found in the Book of Genesis. The idea of the sort of stories that they tell about the Nephilim in the 21st century are crap. Okay, they are not originating in the Bible. If you actually look up what Nephilims are in the Bible, they don't actually represent what the stories are being told, including by Christian groups. So the groups are actually misquoting their own books and misquoting each other, and mimetic sort of virus almost of people just talking, quite frankly, garbage and not looking up their primary sources. Although, to be fair, this physical body has never looked up Vice Levi and John Dee's primary sources. They had to look them up on, Wikipedia. On that particular subject, we'll go another step. Okay. The step we're going into is Jungian, the misquoting and the misuse of Jungian psychodynamic and Jungian and Freudian psychodynamic theory by occultists. Tech word, buzzword. You'll probably notice that the New Age movement, Theosophy, and other groups have been banning the word narcissism around like it was, the catch-all panacea to the world's problems to do so. Tech word, buzzword later. They confuse quantum with consciousness. Quantum refers to measurement. It doesn't actually refer to an actual object or subject or even noumena. It's just a unit of measurement, so it's a tool, not a tradesman type of thing. It's a imaginal construct. Okay, a quantum is an imaginal construct. It's not the actual imagination. It's not the one doing the imagination. Okay. It's not a particle. Okay, of spiritual or physical variety or any variety. It is an imaginal construct. So the word quantum refers to an imaginal construct. And these people who took that tech word and that buzzword out of context, particularly when you get the Penrose type characters that talk about things called quantum consciousness, okay, is misquoting his own science, and he's also misquoting psychology as well, and he's ignored the actual philosophical basis for what's called the Enlightenment, or what they call Western sciences in the first place, which is Kantian dialectics. And and so here we are. We'll use Kantian dialectics and have a little like or Kantian like dialectics again, and show how Jung has been, in particular, has been a favourite amongst the New Age movement and Theosophy type, the Theosophic type groups in particular, for misquoting. Take, for example, the first thing that needs to be stated about Jung is that he never discovered the archetypes of the collective consciousness in the first place. He found the culturally myopic ones that applied to his own particular time and place. So the cultural constructs that he was working with were specific to Jung's time and place and need to be seen in that context. So they don't actually represent a spiritual path or truth or imaginal construct system of logic that applies to every single culture and every single person, every single time and place. It is in fact specific to Jung's time and place and Jung's time and place only, and has in fact been taken out of context by everyone else who were accustomed to the experience of the projection of predominantly European ideas, but not exclusively, onto other groups through the colonial imperial activities that were occurring since even before Kant's time by a couple of hundred years, and well until the end of the 20th century, and we are still dealing with the consequences now. So Jung never found the archetypes that apply to each and every culture and each and every person around the world. He only found those that were relevant to his own place. There was a over-exaggeration about the applicability of that means of worldview to everywhere else in general. There are also many other ways of dealing with things, and so there you have it. Okay, so see everything that may or may relate to Jung within the context of Jung only and his particular time and place. So take, for example, the Christ archetype. It's not native to Australia. It wasn't native to North America or South America. You don't find it in Asia, except in places that have already had Christianity introduced, or cultures that were derived from the root cultures that led to Christianity. Okay? Bearing in mind that Indo-European paganism has its origin in a culture which also caused the cultures that led to Christianity as well. Okay? There was a culture that predated Sumeria that led to those other cultures, which eventually led to Christianity. Okay, Wicca and stuff like that is not the true original Indo-European paganism either. And that culture that's being referred to that predates Sumeria is also not the original Indo-European paganism. Okay, it is something that changed in a consequence of the advent of agriculture. So again, you've got to put it into context. So when Jung was talking about that stuff in the 1920s and 1930s, he was well outside being in touch with, like, he's completely out of touch with pre-Christian German and Austrian cultural concepts. Okay, he was absolutely couched within the cultural myopia of his time and place. So, in non-canon, okay, so use the language of canon and apocryphal, which are basically Christian religious terms, but and that they've got applied to sort of like some other cultural spaces, but we'll use them anyway, just for the heck of it. There is a book that is not commonly read by students of psychology in the main, that Jung did write, called The Red Book. This physical body has not read the Red Book completely, but was able to glean its table of contents and sort of flick through the pages to see the very beautiful artworks and very colourful artworks that book contains. It is, if nothing else, an artistic tone of visual splendour. To look at that book and you can appreciate it artistically on its merits alone. Beyond that, ideologically, it's a load of crap. Just perusing the contents, you can see straight away that it is culturally myopic, that it is 100% about Jung's time and place. And in particular, the reference, there is a reference that was, there's awareness of, that comes from that book where Jung has a vision of going to Hades and seeing a swastika there. And he's had that vision before the rise of Hitler, by the way. So for some people, that's considered a sort of a symptom of precognition or precognitive abilities. And although it's not disputed that it is in fact possible that Jung did that, precognitive abilities are in fact known to exist in some places, including in parapsychology. It isn't necessary, though, however, to explain that particular vision. Jung, being a man he was from Austria and living in the Austro-German area, formerly known as the Weimar Republic, in the years leading up to the rise of Hitler, was actually a soldier in the Weimar Republic and did take some of his psychodynamic ideas from working with soldiers who had been injured during the World War I. So that means he was, in fact, interacting with people who were the people that founded the Nazi Party in Austria and Germany in the 1920s. He was going to the hospitals and talking to the people who founded the Nazi Party. Okay? If you know your history, you will know that the German Nazi Party, okay, was founded by former Weimar Republic soldiers. That their brown shirt uniforms and stuff like that was harking back to their time there. That the amphetamines that they were addicted to had in fact come from their time in the Weimar Republic's First World War army. That their grievances were about Germany being sanctioned as a consequence of that, and they were transferring their aggression and their rage onto groups that didn't cause it, namely Jews, gypsies, and disabled people. Okay? So they were racist bigots who were transferring their butthurt about World War I onto people who didn't cause it, and started World War II as a consequence because they were high on meth. They were crackheads. That is an actual historical fact. The doctor that was prescribing the drugs to Hitler was Dr. Morrill. You can look it up. It actually wasn't Carl Gustav Jung at all. But before World War II happened, before Hitler's team got elected in 1933, okay, back in the 1920s, Jung was going to the hospital and seeing some of those guys, okay, or not necessarily the personal main core ones, but, you know, to the side there type of thing, different units and platoons to get ideas for his psychodynamic theory. And as a consequence, it is absolutely most likely the case, without a shred of a doubt, okay, entirely plausible, that one of the people that came into that hospital was going to the beer halls and showed him the Nazi flag. It is also the case that Jung and Freud both had a house in Austria before Freud went to England because the Jews were about to be targeted and he happened to be Jewish. Jung wasn't, though. They both had a house in Austria at the time, which they took mind-altering substances to do a practice that they were developing or extending upon from a man named William James called introspection. So in the history of psychology, some people get taught that modern psychology begins with a guy practicing what's called introspection, named William James, in some time in the 1800s, has no science to it whatsoever. And then you get to the 1920s, basically, and Freud and Jung are off their face on drugs, starting a cult called psychodynamic theory, okay, and psychoanalysis, to which words like narcissism, projection, introjection, transference, and countertransference also come from, and also have been misquoted by a lot of groups. You also get the Jung variant, which is slightly different from the Freudian variant, because before Freud fled to Britain, him and Jung had a fight. They disagreed over the word libido. For Freud, it had a sexual connotation. For Jung, it just had a creative impulse connotation, and they disagreed over that and a few other matters. Jung did spend a lot of time with former Weimar Republic soldiers when he was working in the hospitals to get some of his ideas, and he would have met people who had the swastika as an early symbol, or said, oh, this is going to be important, or something like that. Okay, those guys were running a cult, both of them, so they were charlatans. Later on, after that, after World War II, psychology takes a more empirical focus, gets interested in things like doing things in clinics with statistics, measurement, laboratory equipment. Behaviorism becomes a big thing, and B.F. Skinner invents the poker machine. And so with that, that's the basic history of psychology there, up until about 1950s. Really, like Western psychology, real basic. Forget about Ibn Sina and all the rest for a moment, okay? So we'll go back to Jung, okay? As you can see that right there and there is an alternate explanation that is not esoteric, does not ascribe precognition as a cause, can clearly show it's entirely possible that Jung was a man of his time and place. It doesn't mean he was a Nazi or a Nazi sympathiser. It means he met Nazis. He lived in a time and place where there were Nazis. So what do you think he's going to do? Meet fucking Nazis. Really? Among other people. No fucking kidding. He happened to live in the time and place with the Nazis. So he happened to see a Nazi symbol. No, you wouldn't have thought that, would you? No, instead he was talking about some great esoteric truth where he had discovered the deep archetypal symbols of humanity, and it was applicable to every single culture and every person in it. And if you didn't follow the archetypes, you weren't following the system properly and you can get stuffed. No. Okay? He was doing introspection and describing his own culture myopia. And the culture myopia of people that came later, by trying to project that outside of that, is crap. It's rubbish. It's false. Okay? They've lied. They've confused people. Now, for people that is their culture, for people who they do resonate with that, for people who do agree with that, they're allowed to have that. Okay? The problem is this New Age movement and Theosophic movement have done the same thing the Vatican did and the Anglican Church did with their Kybalion and their Kabbalah and their symbolism, is that they've tried to spread it fucking everywhere. They've tried to make it the collective consciousness, okay, the collective symbolism, by geomancy, by things that they've done in Hollywood. So those weirdos that talk to you about, there's a Hollywood propaganda to do the Masonic symbolism, they're trying to program and they're doing cult program and stuff like that, blah, 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 and they're doing the devil's work, okay. They're framing their opposition to those imaginal constructs from their pre-existing imaginal constructs called Christianity, basically. However, to say that they're not doing that is crap. They definitely are. Okay, if you have a look at it, they definitely are. Okay, they've tried to make it to normalise symbols from their cults so that people accept it as though it's truth, okay? You don't have to accept any imaginal construct as truth. Not one. It doesn't. Not Jungian, not Freudian, not Kybalion or New Thought movement, not the New Age movement, not Thelema, not the Bible, not anything. You don't have to accept any of, not Red Book. You don't have to accept anything. Confucianism, you don't have to accept that either. It doesn't matter. Dhammapada, Bhagavad Gita, you don't have to accept the Quran, Talmud, nothing. You don't have to accept anything. Okay? Any of their cultural constructs or any of their imaginal constructs is absolute fact. You just don't have to. You don't have to accept the Democrats. You don't have to accept the Republicans. You don't have to accept Liberal or Labor. You don't have to accept Clive Palmer as an alternative, because all he's doing is manipulating imaginal constructs to make him a big walking target sign. So everyone who knows what Trump's really been up to, which is usurping the courts, declaring himself a king, acting like a complete fucking dictator, and supporting people who express the symbols of hate and the groups associated with attempting to bring back the actual hate, because let's not forget that even though it's imaginary from the perspective of the present, phenomenologically, in the past, World War II did in fact happen. Phenomenologically, in the past, that Holocaust happened. Phenomenologically, they did use those symbols as the imaginal constructs to brand their particular type of hate. So that very strong association that people have with, say, the swastika, for example, as being a symbol of hate, despite its actual origins, okay, pre-Hitler, okay, is part of the collective mind space's linguistic and symbolic acceptance of that as an imaginal construct to describe that reality that once was. And so when Elon Musk got up on stage and he did his salute and stuff like that, and he phenomenologically expressed the imaginal construct of that symbol, and in fact the entire egregor right there, it showed him to be, quote unquote, a Nazi. Okay? So was that enough to show that he was a Nazi? No, it's not. Okay? Him giving $1 million to the AfD, which they believe to have neo-Nazi leanings, okay, in some of their membership, not all of it, okay, is what? Supporting it. Okay, actually admitting on a social media platform that he bought specifically for the purposes of enforcing propaganda upon others, including stuff that is direct from the 21st century alt-right pipeline, aka Twitter, to openly admit in writing that he was staging a coup. Yes, there's a coup, okay, so it's a little bit more than just a guy mucking about with symbols. Okay, what else is going on there? His entire family has been propagating videos about their history, about how his mother, Meg Haldeman, was from Birmingham, and his grandfather from Birmingham and his mother were part of the German Nationalist Party of Birmingham in Canada, also known as a neo-Nazi group, and were also associated with the technocratic neo-fascist movement in disguise, and deliberately moved to South Africa just to be in apartheid. And then he got together with Peter Thiel and David Sachs, who were also Afrikaners, at a time when the South African apartheid had just ended, to deliberately write a book called The Diversity Myth, because they were wildly opposed to racial integration practices, and then went on a great big fucking rant around the world about how when the simulation must have been real, with the white part not spoken, that they were high when they watched The Matrix, just so they can join the military-industrial complex to make Neuralink cybernetic implants for the purposes of mind control and putting simulations on people's fucking heads, potentially. Okay, just quietly, you. Okay, he's a fucking Nazi. Okay. If somebody does that on their own, okay, Just that one thing, they're not a fucking Nazi, okay? When they invoke through phenomenologically an imaginal construct, a symbol like that, that's not enough to say they're a fucking Nazi. All that other stuff does. He's led the life of a Nazi. He was raised by Nazis. He lived in a Nazi society. He's tried to recreate a Nazi society in the USA. He's worked with people who's known to support the KKK, like Donald Trump, okay, and so on and so forth, okay? He's a fucking Nazi. Okay, he's goose-stepped like a Nazi, he's talked like a Nazi, he's walked like a Nazi, he's funded fucking Nazis, he's worked in Nazi fucking business fucking operations, okay, or fascist or totalitarian or whatever you want to call it, okay? Fascist, totalitarian, Nazi and Nazi are not all the same thing, although fascists technically are authoritarian, totalitarian ways of looking at things, they're not necessarily Nazi ones. Okay, use the Nazi symbol to invoke fascism or something like that, whatever. The point is those imaginal constructs were meant to stay imaginal in the past, in the 1940s, okay? So that was a phenomenon in the 1940s that was meant to stay there, okay, by not being invoked again, okay? Which is why, you know, painting swastikas in synagogues is considered a bad idea, okay? You don't go paint swastikas in synagogues, do you? Okay, because you know what? You already know why, don't you? You can figure it out. Even though the swastika in question is an imaginal construct, even though the religion Judaism is all imaginal constructs, okay? It's all crap. It's all people making shit up. It invokes a real phenomenological fucking event that either physical bodies that went to that fucking went to that synagogue, or their parents or grandparents actually went through. The physical bodies that survived the Holocaust still exist. They're old and they're decrepit, but they still exist in some cases. Okay? So they don't want to be reminded of that fucking shit. What are you gonna do? What are you gonna do? Are you gonna send pictures of comfort women being raped to rape survivors? Are you going to maybe get a picture of a redhead and call her a witch and say she's a witch and threaten to burn her at a stake while facing a woman's mountain on a scabbard that is symbolically designed to pretend it's stabbing women through the fucking war memorial? We'll get all those dead soldiers, that knife as we plunge it into your vagina. Are they saying the women of Australia are comfort women for the international military or the British Imperial Army? Are they saying Julia Gillard was a bad person? He deserved to be burned at the stake just like all those redheads and barren, unmarried women that came before her. These are all imaginal constructs, these symbols. Picture of fire, a cross, so on and so forth. Again and again, you can go through many, many symbols there. Many, many indeed. Yet for some fucking reason, that Noumea has meaning. There's imaginal constructs that have meaning. When Julia Gillard gave the misogyny speech, it told all of them off. Put them in their place. There will be no swastikas put on redheads. There will be no swastikas put on barren and unmarried women. There will be no swastikas put on Aboriginal women. Not on the entirety of the east coast of Australia. But it wasn't a swastika though, was it? It was witch burning stuff. Okay? It's called consistency. If you're going to be psychotic and acknowledge that imaginary constructs have some kind of motivational capacity for people, okay, and you've got to stand up against the hatred of one imaginary construct, then you should stand up against the hatred of the others as well. Thank you, Julia Gillard, for being consistent in your anti-hatred. Thank Julia Gillard for being consistent, please. That's consistency. She did a good thing. Okay? If you're going to be consistent like that, you cannot support the Bible, nor can you support the Kabbalah. Kabbalah not necessarily being the Jewish one in this case, because if you look it up, you'll find there's more than one. There's what you might call culturally misappropriated rip-offs, and Thelem is part of that. So, be consistent. Don't support one camp or the other. Acknowledge both have faults and both have merits. Be consistent. Try to create imaginary constructs that are fair, honest, respectable, helpful to people, lead to a fair and just outcome. You want to write the horror genre, do you? Okay, write the horror genre. Well, don't go telling people that it's part of a occult, esoteric, hidden truth of reality that you just can't see. Tell people that it's in the fiction section for a bloody reason. Take your Bible with its devil and put it in the fiction section. Take your Kabbalah with its Malkuth and Lilith crap and put it in the fiction section. Go on. Acknowledge their imaginal constructs, because even a Christian pastor named Immanuel Kant would have done that. And acknowledge that your archetypes that you've ripped off from Jung and misquoted were also imaginal constructs of a guy from his time and place that were overgeneralized by people who don't even understand what the word quantum is. Go on. Do it. Tell the truth.